Hey, this is Joe Hyde with San Angelo Live, and we're broadcasting live from the West Texas Legislative Summit being held today on the campus of He's the CEO of the Port of Corpus Christi.
Yeah,
And
nice,
so
nice to see you, Joe.
So the important thing for people out in West Texas to understand is, in order for you to make money in West Texas, you got to be able to get your oil to market. And the port of, from what I understand, the Port of Corpus Christi has the largest capacity to export liquids. Is that right?
Well, so
did I say it right?
Almost. So
Okay.
The Port of Corpus Christi is the largest gateway today, Joe, in the United States for the exportation of U.S. produced energy.
And we just like 2015, that's when they passed a law where we can export energy from here.
Exporting crude oil.
Crude oil.
There was a ban on crude oil that
Right.
had been in place for 40 years. And that ban was repealed in late 2015. And the first crude oil shipment to be exported from the United States in 40 years sailed 2 weeks after that repeal out of the Port of Corpus Christi. And we've never looked back. We're now the largest crude oil export gateway to our allies and trading partners around the world. And for your West Texas audience and listeners, I also want to remind them we also are one of the largest agriculture export gateways. Ag is up almost 50% year over year this year. Obviously, yields are doing real well and prices are doing real good. So, this is a country that can not only feed and fuel its own population, but we've got enough left over to export to trading partners overseas, and that's what the Port of Corpus Christi does, is helps facilitate the infrastructure needed for that.
Can you explain to our audience what the difference is and what the need is for a second port here in Texas? Because we have the Port of Houston, the largest port in the world, that kind of thing. You hear those things all the time. But we have the Port of Houston, Port of Corpus Christi. What makes Port of Corpus Christi different and needed?
Well, there are actually 21 ports in Texas,
Okay.
Joe. And
I missed all the county airports.
No, we're talking Beaumont, Port Arthur,
Right.
Brownsville, Freeport,
Right.
certainly Houston and Galveston, and there's a lot in between there. But the two largest are, of course, the Port of Houston, which is the number one tonnage waterway in the country, and the Port of Corpus Christi, which is the number three tonnage waterway in the country. And the distinction between Houston and Corpus Christi is really Houston is primarily a container port. They do a tremendous amount of energy and petrochemicals as well, but they're the largest container port in the U.S. Gulf. And containers are the modality for primarily finished products,
Right.
The things that we use in our everyday lives.
So, like if you're importing dresses from China.
Footwear, apparel, electronics, certainly foodstuffs and refrigerated containers. But Texas is primarily an export port, and when you look at
You mean Corpus Christi?
The state in and of itself, the state, 20% of all exports from the United States move through Texas ports, and so Houston is a 1-to-1 in terms of its container business. For every container that's imported, there's a container that's exported, which is great because nationally that average is about 0.5-to-1. So for every container that's imported, only a half a container is exported. At the Port of Corpus Christi, we're 3-to-1 export. So for every ton that's imported, there's 3 tons that are exported.
Is that because crude oil weighs so much?
It's crude oil, it's natural gas, liquefied natural gas. We have the largest LNG liquefaction facility in the state of Texas in Corpus Christi. We do a tremendous amount of natural gas liquids. We also have 1 million barrels of refining capacity there with Valero, Citgo, and Flint Hills. And a lot of that gets exported primarily to Mexico and in Latin America to some of those demand centers. So, really from our standpoint, ports in general, and certainly the Port of Corpus Christi in particular, are about developing the infrastructure that's needed to continue to promulgate trade, international trade.
Speaking of developing infrastructure, 3 years ago, 2018, that was the first time I became aware. I actually wrote a couple stories about the Port of Corpus Christi and how it impacts West Texas. You were working to get make your waterways deeper and get the Corps of Engineers to, I guess, dredge out and make it deeper. Explain how that project's working and how much money it's costing and that kind of thing.
Well, certainly any port, the lifeblood, the main artery of any port is the ship channel, their main channel, and there are 8 deep draft channel improvement projects going on in the state of Texas, including the Corpus Christi Ship Channel Improvement Project, which has been 30 years in the making. You know, the feasibility study for that project commenced by the Army Corps of Engineers in 1990.
Wow.
Here we are in 2021, and we're not quite halfway completed with the entire project. The challenge with that project is we need more appropriations for the Army Corps of Engineers so they can continue to execute that work. That's the same challenge with all other ports in Texas. And we've got to get the Corps to move a little faster or to delegate the work to port authorities like the Port of Corpus Christi, because we think we can actually do that work better, faster, cheaper. We're in the dredging business as well. So, you know, that's really the challenge, is getting the federal government and the administration that's in office at the time to appropriate the sufficient dollars.
Well, they have the infrastructure bill coming through.
Well, they do, and interestingly, you know, for ports, it's about $17.5 billion over
That's
5
it?
years. And, you know, Texas alone needs about $4 billion in our estimation to improve its navigable waterways. And so we could take a fourth of that, and that's for the entire country, and that's both for inland and coastal navigation. So it is certainly not enough money, Joe. And that's why we're working with the great congressional delegation that we have here in Texas to help continue to tell that story and hopefully get us more money for the Corps.
Tell me what you would, for someone who's not in the boating business or into the shipping business, what benefits, explain to me tactically what you're doing and what kind of boats you can bring in if you're able to get this thing completely dredged, and what benefits would it bring to not only Corpus Christi but to West Texas?
Yeah, so, you know, these are commodities, and commodities certainly have cyclical pricing cycles, and transportation, they're very sensitive, price sensitive, including the transportation costs. And we are competing with other sovereignties like Russia and Iran and Venezuela that are more nefarious in their use of their petrodollars. So
they have cheaper labor.
They certainly have cheaper labor. And so getting our energy and our agriculture products to those markets that need it, we've got to do it in a competitive manner. And vessel technologies have evolved over the last 30 years much more rapidly than infrastructure has been able to keep pace. And a good example of that is the Panama Canal. There's now a new expanded Panama Canal. The Panama Canal Authority and the Panamanian government recognized that if they didn't make those improvements, recognizing that vessel technology was getting much larger and evolving much faster than infrastructure could keep pace, that they would be relegated to a niche player and not a global trade lane force, if you will. And that's really the challenge for all ports and all countries. And so that's why we've got to continue to invest in deeper channels, in longer berths, in taller cranes, to be able to handle these larger classifications
And they're called VL. They're called very large container ships or cargo ships.
You've certainly got large container ships, neo-Panamax and post-Panamax container ships. When I started in the industry in 1990, it was about 4,400 TEUs, 20-foot equivalent units on a container ship. That was the largest container ship in the world. Today, it's 25,000 TEUs on one ship. So over 30 years, that technology has evolved much more rapidly, and infrastructure takes a long time. It's certainly generational, and it's certainly expensive.
So can a VLCC dock in Corpus Christi?
So a VLCC, a very large crude carrier, we have them coming to Corpus Christi today. The problem is they can't fully load. They can't carry all the capacity. So they sell out light, and what happens is they go into open water, and then we shuttle out the remaining cargoes in what's called a reverse lightering operation. That causes more emissions, that causes more congestion, certainly more cost for our customers and the shippers.
And safety.
Well, when you have more traffic, potentially you have some additional safety issues, although I think we've done a really good job working with the Coast Guard and widening the channel to make sure that we've got good separation. But certainly cost and emissions is something that we want to be focused on. And so deepening that channel and widening that channel to be able to handle those larger classification of ships, that's really the name of the game, whether it's the Port of Corpus Christi, the Port of Houston, the Port of Brownsville, or any other port.
And so everyone else is trying to deepen theirs also.
All through the country. And so these federal dollars that are in this infrastructure bill, they're going to be competed. You know, we're going to be competing with other states.
Right.
And that's why, you know, we certainly commend our congressional delegation, whether it's Senators Cornyn and Cruz, or whether it's Senator Pfluger from here, or Senator Arrington from Lubbock.
Right.
But, you know, at the end of the day, we all need to be doing more to make sure that Texas is getting its fair share.
And the benefit to West Texas, and we'll conclude with this, is if we had more capacity at the port to export our crude, we could pump more through the pipelines out of here, and they can make more money with the oil, and then everyone will be happy, and they'll be buying more new cars.
Well, and it'll certainly be exported competitively,
Right.
because when you're looking at, the large markets like China, the European Union, and India,
Right.
they are very price sensitive, and so we've got to make sure we do it. We do it competitively. And I also want to give a shout out to Congressman Williams and Congressman Jackson, because they
Right.
certainly were here today, and we're also big supporters from the ag side.
Right.
And we're not just talking energy. Ports are omniports. We
Right.
handle a multitude of commodities, including the Port of Corpus Christi is the largest military load center supporting the American warfighter, both at home and abroad.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Sean. It's been a pleasure having you on our show.
Thank you.
And
Appreciate
I'm
it, Joe.
Joe Hyde with San Angelo Live. This is the West Texas Legislative Summit, and we'll be returning in probably about 30 minutes or so.